Hello, and welcome to Observations, the program devoted to observing what Yahowah has to say and comparing it to what man intends and has to say. Today we're going to investigate what God had to say about government, and especially a government that would be headed by a Benjamite named Shaul. A man who was given the same name as was the author of more than half of the Christian New Testament. And before we begin our review of this testimony from Yahowah, and it is riveting, it is one of the most unreported and yet essential bits of advice from God regarding the best way to conduct our lives, what we should choose and not choose. But before we do so, since the conflict here is between God and the men known as Shaul, Paul, I'd like to share with you the idiocy of the proposition that Paul foisted on the world that became Christianity. It would be exactly like God saying, "You cannot trust my original plan because it was all a cruel hoax. And even though I told you otherwise, and although I proved that this was my plan and that it would prevail forever, in actuality, I asked a cruel and vicious man, a duplicitous man, a sexual pervert, and an egomaniac, a man who was insane and demon-possessed, to come up with an entirely different plan and provided no evidence or any proof of any kind of its viability, but just reject everything I had to say and that I proved to be true, and believe him exclusively, and you'll be saved." What fool would buy into a religion based on that premise?
Most of the world.
Yeah, most of the world. But all these statements that I made about Paul are by his own admission. He was cruel and vicious. That's how he introduces himself,
Right.
as cruel and vicious. He was a duplicitous man. He says, I pretended to be whatever served my interests. If somebody was was Torah observant, I pretended to be Torah observant even though I wasn't. And if they were not Torah observant, I disregarded the Torah. If they were a Jew, I pretended to be a Jew. If they were Gentile, I pretended to be a Gentile. I just pretended to be whatever suited my interests. He was duplicitous, constantly contradicting himself. By his own admissions, read Romans 7, he was a sexual pervert. Read any one of his books, and you'll know that he was an egomaniac. The one thing God despises in humanity. He claimed in the second letter that he wrote to Corinth that he was insane. He admitted to being demon-possessed in that same letter. And he claims that God's original testimony was a cruel hoax, that it had no ability to save anyone. And even though God proved that he authored that plan because he compiled thousands of prophetic statements in it, Paul provided absolutely no proof whatsoever that his wholly and completely contradictory plan was valid, nor any proof that God's plan was invalid. And yet the world lugs around a book named after Baal, after confusion, Babel, that contains the testimony of God, which they completely reject, so that instead they can put their faith in this ridiculous claim by this ridiculous buffoon of a man. That is Christianity. If you're a victim of it, you deserve it. You have no one to blame but yourself. What you're doing is stupid. Now, that said, Kirk, you and I, in Shattering Myths program,
Yes.
came to discuss first Shamuel 8, where God is confronted by Shamuel, which means listen to God. When he reports that the people want a king, they want a government over them like the rest of the Gentile nations. And God provides Shamuel with quite a response as to what he should convey back to the people regarding all of this.
Yes, he does. Point by
and point by point. And we're going to go through it point by point. But one of the things that is really interesting in all of this is that while God is incredibly antagonistic towards human governance, and saying that those who choose human governance are doing so in complete and total rejection of him, Paul, this insane, demon-possessed, vicious egomaniac who was duplicitous, claimed exactly the opposite. In Romans 13, he told all who would believe him that God actually establishes governments and that governments work together for good and that God wants you to submit to your government.
Salute the flag.
Yeah, isn't that the opposite of what God says through his prophets?
Absolutely. There's no time when he says bow down to a government. There's no time when he endorses a king. David was a unique individual. He would have been a prophet. He would have been someone like Samuel or somebody. He would have been a great leader regardless, but he was not necessary as a king.
Yeah, David's life with Yahowah, the relationship he developed with Yahowah, was all before he became king.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
When he became king, he involved himself in some really inappropriate behaviors that actually diminished and stained his relationship with Yahowah.
Yes, it did.
So when Dode was out as a sheep herder, as a shepherd, when Dode was engaging as an individual with a personal relationship with Yahowah,
mm-hmm.
That's when he grew. That's when his words were inspired and powerful and move us today.
Yes. No argument there.
Yeah. Now, that being the case, when Shaul, who is the individual that is being substituted for God in this particular discussion,
mm-hmm.
He was anti-David and anti-Dode, and that's important because Shaul, who was known as Paul by Christians, was opposed to the thing that Dode held most dear.
Correct.
Dode held most dear his relationship with Yahowah and the message that Yahowah provided in his Torah.
Exactly.
That's what he wrote about. That's what he loved. That's what he cherished. That is what he observed. And so Dode is the equivalent, if you will, in terms of God's love, of his Torah observance, of Yosha.
Mm-hmm. And if there's any doubt, I mean, you go to the 119th Psalm and think about how David talked about the mitzvah and the mitzvot and the chok.
Right.
I mean, he elevates these things to the most important things in the world, which they are.
Right.
Agreement.
Yeah. It's a review of how to observe the Torah using the 22 letters that comprise the words that are found in the Torah, listed in alphabetic order with 8 sentences devoted to each of the 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet on a specific topic: how to properly observe, closely examine, and carefully consider what the Torah has to say and how to benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
So what Yahowah is saying here is that that's the choice. It's Shaul or Yahweh and his Torah. It's Yahweh's guidance or man's guidance. That's the referendum. It's the antithesis of what Paul wrote. It's the antithesis of what Paul proposed. It's the antithesis of Christianity. It is, however, wholly consistent with the covenant. Because in the covenant, what is the first thing that we're asked to do before we can even engage in a relationship with God?
Walk away from government.
Right.
Walk away from religious leaders. Anyone
Right.
that sets himself above you.
Walk away from Babel, from confusion, from being with Baal, from your Bible, if you will,
Right.
from all things country, patriotic, religious, governmental. And so God is explaining why he has said that and establishing the nature of government, which has not changed over the course of these many thousands of years.
It just kind of struck me. These governments and kings are people who lift themselves up above us. And the term in Hebrew for that is Allah.
Yeah, Allah. Yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing? But it's also interesting that the reason that God chose Dode to reign over his children, if you will, after the utter failure of Shaul, was because Dode was like the man that preceded Shaul, not as a king, but as a messenger, as an example. And the one that preceded him was Shemuel, the person who this conversation with God is occurring with and through. And so, because Dode was Torah observant, his constitution was the Torah, and if we use the Torah to guide, to lead, to teach, to instruct, then what we are doing is God's bidding.
That's right. So in that context, there's no problem with Yahweh's view of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Yahweh even established what he called judges, these individuals who could resolve human disputes based upon his constitution, his Torah. Right. They could not go outside the Torah. They couldn't take away from the Torah. They couldn't add to the Torah. But if people had disputes or misunderstandings,
went to the Torah.
They went to the Torah, and based upon the Torah, these individuals helped the people through their disagreements.
Right.
And so the role that Shemuel was playing was exactly that. Right. He had no other role. That was his only role. Is to, when people were confused, when they needed advice, when they had a disagreement, when they were questioning something, they went to Shemuel, and he, based upon his understanding of Yahweh's instructions, provided guidance and answers. And if they said something that did not compute, that there were no answers in the Torah, Shemuel went to Yahweh and said, I need help on this one.
What a concept, huh?
What a concept. Right. And, of course, if you read what Dode had to say, he performed the same role, which is why when Yahweh returns, he will reestablish the kingdom of Dode, which is the kingdom whereby the instructions and guidance are provided by his Torah.
Right.
What a marvelous idea.
Why I said mist is quite plain. It truly is. I mean, you got to read it.
Right.
You got to read enough to find it, but it's there.
Now, I'd like to start in the sixth statement of the 8th chapter of Shemuel.
Okay, let me flip to there.
And it begins as follows. And this statement, he's talking about the children of Israel that said, you're worn out, you're tired, you're not performing in the role we want you to perform anymore. We want a king, like the Gentile nations, to rule over us. And so this is Shemuel's reaction to it. And this statement, this ha-dabar, this matter and word, this speech, was literally wrong and was always harmful was Ra'ah. It was decidedly evil and actually immoral. It was genuinely wicked and continuously troubling. It was consistently displeasing, dangerous, and distressing. It would bring great hardship, affliction, misery, and terrible mistreatment, absolute calamity, injury, and ruin over time. It's from Ra, meaning it was improper and sinful, and would sever the relationship, bringing sadness, sorrow, and regret. It was written in the call stem, which denotes a literal interpretation, imperfect conjugation, which conveys ongoing results. Well, that's the start of this. We're only now 3 words or 4 words into it. Wah-ha dabar, Ra'ah. And so Shemuel was extraordinarily well grounded in Yahweh's Torah. He knew Yahweh. He knew his personality. He knew his nature. He knew his plan. He knew his purpose. He knew his teaching. He knew his guidance. And so when the people said, we want a king like the other Gentile nations, we don't like this plan that Yahweh has delineated, Shaul's response was immediate. He didn't say, hey, good going, guy. That sounds like an interesting option. I'll run it up a flagpole and see what the boss thinks. Or, it's free will. You just go ahead and make whatever choice you want to make. It'll be fine. I'm sure it'll work out. It's what's in your heart that counts. God wouldn't want to deprive you of a government and king. I'm sure it'll be I'm sure it'll work out to be a great choice. I don't know why God didn't mention it, but the plan that God wrote, that was back there, and a lot of years ago, and it's now modern times. It's 1000 BCE, and that crazy plan that He wrote was 450 years ago. It's outdated. So sure. Wasn't that his reaction?
Hardly. See, if you observed all the kings around, if you looked at all the Goyim, all these Gentile kings,
right,
all of them had to. You had to bow down to them.
Right.
They would make idols of themselves and raise themselves up as gods, more than just a king, but a god.
Yep.
And if you had any familiarity at all with the statements in stone, they'll have no idols, and you won't bow down to these people, and you won't serve these people. Where's the disconnect?
Yeah. Did they all have militaries?
They all had military.
Did their militaries all march on their command?
Yes, indeed.
And did they typically have their militaries march and kill and be killed based upon the whims, the covetousness of the king? The king wanted the neighboring territory. He wanted what belonged to the neighboring king. He wanted to be over the neighboring king, so he had his stooges go off and kill for him.
So you've got theft, covetousness,
right,
murder.
Didn't they not only kill their neighbors? Didn't they also enslave their neighbors?
Indeed, they did.
They raped the women.
They did.
And what happened if you had a dispute that you say, hey, king, you go ahead and do your thing. It's just not my thing. You leave me alone. I'll do my thing. You do your thing. What would happen?
They would put a hook through your nose and drag you off into slavery.
Right.
Probably beat you to death if you said it twice.
So you lose free will. You lose, they will confiscate your wealth. Was there ever a king that didn't tax his people?
Never.
So you lose your free will, you lose your wealth. Did the kings always conscript your sons into the military to go off and do their bidding?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did the king control everything?
Yeah, history dictates all that. I mean, it says all that over and over.
Right. So why would anyone in their right mind want a king?
See, these people had the Torah, though. They could hear it once a week. If you couldn't read, somebody would read it to you.
Right. But, you even look at the letters that comprise these words. Let's say you were illiterate. This word that is so informative, Ra'ah, is written Rosh Ein Ein. Well, Rosh is the perspective
of a person
of man. Well, Ain is perspective in the sight of, and Rosh is the thinking of man.
Right.
And so this is Ain. This is the perspective of man on steroids. This is man's way, man's perspective. So you want to be governed by a king? He's saying here, Rosh Ain. You know, the Ain was an eye. It talked about perspective and understanding. It's repeated twice, and the Rosh is the picture of a man's head. It means highest, best, top, chief. Mm-hmm. And it depicts a person with, their eyes and ears, so that this is the observations and the understanding of man.
Right.
The man's way. And it is the word that means decidedly evil, harmful, wrong, immoral, troubling, displeasing, disastrous, distressing, bringing great hardship, affliction, misery, mistreatment, calamity, injury, sadness, sorrow, regret, severing the relationship. I mean, what's left out?
And these weren't just the ordinary people. These were supposedly the elders of the tribes. These were the people that were old enough to have had experience and have known.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is really tragic when you start to read it. I mean,
yeah, these are people in Israel with direct access to the Torah, who were only 400 years removed. In fact, at this point, they're probably a little less than that removed from the Exodus itself, and from the handing down of the Torah, living in Israel. I mean, they of all people.
Now, in the earlier part of this, when they go to Samuel and they say to him, your sons are corrupt, and basically can be bought off to be judges. Well, why didn't they say, okay, we still want the same deal, but we don't want your sons? Pick somebody else.
Right.
I mean, why was not the option that they came to? I mean, I'm talking out loud. Just
right. Yeah. Can you ask Yahowah to appoint another individual that's conversant with him and that is knowledgeable about the Torah and therefore fair and honest?
Right.
Yeah.
Why does that not occur to anyone to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, hypothetically. I mean,
yeah. So this statement was literally wrong and would always be harmful in the eyes and understanding by Ain of Shemuel. Shemuel is a really interesting name. I mean, in the choice between Shemuel and Shaul, one name says, listen to God. The other name says, question him.
Yes.
Just compare the names.
Oh, this is a toughie.
Yeah, one says you ought not trust him, you ought to question him, and the other says he listens to God, and you ought to listen to God. It's not hard here, right?
No, not at all. If you just give it a little thought, I mean, that's what Shamar means.
Yeah. Yeah, and Shemuel is based on Shama, actually, Shama, which means to hear, to pay attention to perceive and understand, El, God Almighty.
Yes.
It's one of the interesting things here that English translations, because Shamar, listen to God, does not suit their religion, because they don't want you listening to God. If it's rabbinic Judaism, they want you to listen to the rabbis, and if it's Christianity, they want you to listen to Paul and the church founders and their pastors, and the last thing they want you to do is listen to God. So to make the Torah sound like it's a bunch of mean laws to be kept, Shama is very seldom translated accurately in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms in English. Babbles. No. It's changed to obey. Now, there's nothing even remotely akin to obey in the verb to listen, to hear.
Yeah, well, but once you've taken shamar, then you can, and change the word, then you can use it that way.
Right. And so, but think about this here. These people were rejecting Shamuel.
Mm-hmm.
So and they know that the name Shamuel is based upon Shama and El, and they know that it means listen to God,
mm-hmm.
and yet the translator wants to have you believe that Shama means obey. And so this would be, if his name was Obey God, or, obey him, or he obeys God, why in the hell would they try to replace him? So this rendering, this changing of Shama to obey, just based on his name and this context, makes that whole thing ridiculous. It's too bad that people don't know what the names mean.
Yeah.
But listens to God is perfect in this context, because what's the first thing that Shamuel does once he hears this?
He goes and talks to Yah.
Yeah, and listens to what Yah has to say.
Listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, and then he tells the people what God had to say, so they can listen to God. The name is defined in the context.
Yes.
Yeah, and by the way, this idea of obey does not work, because God says, listen to what the people have to say.
Yeah.
I want you to listen to what the people have to say, and I don't want you to impose obedience on them. Give them what they want.
Won't.
But this is the consequence. And I want you to tell them the consequence. So this is, and this statement, this matter and word, this speech, was literally wrong and would always be harmful in the eyes and understanding of Shamuel. He listens to God. Accordingly, when they said, and this is a quote, "Appoint for us a ruler for the purpose of actually deciding for us and continually governing over us." So it is the appointment of a ruler to decide and to govern over the people that Shamuel thought was wrong and harmful, miserable, that would bring absolute calamity. Now, there's no way to miss this.
No.
So the thing that Shamuel recognized immediately, and Shamuel is the one person on earth that has an ongoing discussion with Yah, that knows Yah, that respects Yah, that is inspired by Yah, that knows his guidance inside and out, and he knew that the people's request for a ruler to make decisions for them and to govern over them was literally wrong and would always be harmful. Now that should be a full stop on God Bless America. That should be a full stop on In God We Trust on our money.
Mm-hmm.
That should be a full stop for these nincompoops who view their religion and their patriotism and their militarism as all bundled together. God's saying that human governance is a disaster. It also means that there is a 0% possibility that the author of the book of Romans spoke for God when he spoke favorably of government and obedience to government in the 13th chapter of Romans.
There is no point in history where that's a good idea.
Yeah. So this is a point for us. A point for us is Nathan Law, Ana Nu. It means place before us, giving and granting us the approach of, bestowing, producing, committing, granting, and delivering to us. So this, for better part of 2,000 years, the Roman Catholic Church claimed that God appointed kings to rule over the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their claim, that they had divine authority to impose their will on the people. And so this is that mindset where they're saying, appoint for us consecrate for us, deliver to us, grant for us, bestow to us. This Nathan law, this is what they're saying. It's, where you can blame the cleric and king for fooling the people and causing them to believe that God chooses leaders, and that every election cycle there's one of the idiots that says, God told me to run for president. Mm-hmm. And this notion that rulers are appointed by God, which is what the Roman Catholic Church lied about for 2,000 years. We, according to this, can't blame just the cleric and king. It's what the people want. Mm-hmm. Welcome back to Observations. We're considering the sixth statement of the first of two books based on the relationship that a man named Listen to God, Shemuel, had, and the particular discussion may be the most important certainly in this man's life at this time, and maybe for all time. When the people said, appoint for us a ruler, for the purpose of actually deciding for us and continually governing over us, which Shemuel, as the closest individual to God, is the most knowledgeable person on God's nature, plan, and Torah guidance, said was literally wrong and would always be harmful. So a point for us is Nathan law, placed before us, giving and granting us, bestowing and producing and committing, delivering to us. So the point that I made just before we went to the break is that there is this tendency to say, it's not fair that God would have this plan that you have to know, understand, and respond to be saved and to be part of his covenant family, because of the poor souls that existed, say, as serfs, as having no rights under the dictates of cleric and king during the 2,000-year reign of Roman Catholicism. And my answer would be, according to this, the people chose this for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And these were the most knowledgeable people of God's plan on the planet.
Correct. This is what they wanted.
This is human nature, not...
Yeah, it's human nature. Most people are afraid to be responsible. And even today, being responsible is the thing we're trying to, in academia and through political correctness, is to weasel out of people. There's no accountability. There's no individual responsibility. So a point for us, a ruler. This is a Melech, a king. Someone to be in charge of the government, a political, societal, religious, and military authority. An advisor to ponder, to consider, and to respond to. A ruler, a government. Yeah. A Melech. For the purpose of Shaphat, actually deciding for us and continually governing over us. This is Shaphat Nu, always judging for us, having ongoing authority over us, leading us and defending us. The call infinitive construct. It's a verbal noun intensifying the action of an ongoing condition. Actually deciding for us and continually governing over us, having authority over us. So that's your choice. You can choose to have a human institution over you or God's guiding you. That's your option, but you can't have both.
I spent hours and hours and hours going over these things, looking up each one of these words. Not to where you are, but even my feeble attempts, I keep coming back to, you're choosing a man to decide for you when you already have everything, term and condition, every method to achieve success. Every promise you have said, written from the tablets of stone, unearned mercy, kindness,
Mm-hmm.
He's guiding them everywhere. He took them. They know their history.
He's freed them. Yeah, he's freed them. He's fed them. He's clothed them. He's protected them. He's granted them great gifts, a beautiful land. And here they say, no, we don't want that anymore. What we really want is a ruler like all the other countries and a government like all the other countries.
But they'd never lost a battle if when they were with him. He's never failed to take care of them. They had nothing to worry about.
No, and most of their battles were let's go around Jericho of the moon. Let's go around there and we'll holler and shout and sing and beat our drums and blow our horns and.
From there,
and the rest of it's over, And for those who would say, well, then God did the killing, so you want to say that you're smarter, more moral than God, that your decision as to how to deal with that blight, that infection, is better than His.
Well, you can.
If God did it, then you have to admit there is a God.
Yeah.
And if blowing horns, singing songs, and marching around walls cause the walls to crumble, then you're going to have to ask yourself, well, how did that occur? And why isn't that nobody else can perform that same miracle?
Well, you would have to. I think it's probably he knew it was where the earthquake was coming.
Yeah. So always judging for us, having ongoing authority over us. People long for authority. It's one of the things about being part of a religion or a political party is that you have leaders that tell you what to think, what to do.
You were in Russia after the walls came tumbling down, so to speak, in Germany.
I was there before and after.
So how did the people take to it from everything I've read? They long for the days of somebody telling them what to do. Because now you got to make your own job and justify of your what
exactly. Exactly. Once Glasnost occurred and people were open to their own free will, they had no idea what to do. We know when just little things. When they walked into the GUM store, which was the one government store, and there was one type of toothpaste and one kind of a tube, and only there on Tuesdays, and everybody lined up on Tuesdays to get your toothpaste. There wasn't much thinking involved. And then when there was openness, and there were 50 kinds of toothpaste and 100 different delivery systems and available any day and every day, people had to decide. They had to do a little research. They had to decide what was the best value, the best, most effective, and make a decision. And they didn't like it.
That's very telling, isn't it?
It really is. It's telling. It's the nature. It's human nature. It's the wrong aspect of human nature. So Shamuel personally requested ongoing intercession from Yahowah. Now, you mentioned that you didn't go into quite the detail in your translations. There's a reason that I try to scrub every word. And the primary reason is I don't think that you get to where you want to go unless you're consistent.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I look at a word and the primary definition according to the religious periodicals doesn't fit, and I only look at those words and I only go to the root of those words to more accurately and completely define them, I think I'm a bit of a fraud. And so I think the only way to be true and to produce something that is worthy of inspection is to be consistent. So every word gets examined. Every word gets thoughtfully dissected. Every word, you look to the root. You look at words written with the same letters that are marked differently by the Masoretes. Mm-hmm. And you look at the oldest sources. If you don't do your diligence and you're not being consistent, then I don't think that what you produce is as worthy as what you could do otherwise.
No. I'm pretty close to what you've got. It's not quite as much because it was more of a time factor to look it up in 4 more lexicons and so forth. But a lot of this is very helpful to me because I already know a lot of these words, what they mean in depth. So there's
that's a growing knowledge helps. Now, one of the things that I've found is that the number of lexicons isn't as important as the number of words that you look up within each lexicon. So, for example, if you want to look up palal, what you need to do is look at every word that is written the same way, as well as the verbal root of the word, as well as the words that contain the basis of that word.
Right.
And so I will look up, I'll go up and down maybe 10 words, and then I'll look at the root of the word, go up and down 10 words. And so it's the number of words that you look at that are written similarly that I think provides the most complete and accurate definition of a word, as opposed to just looking up the word itself in one lexicon. And you find, too, that there's a lot of words were written exactly the same way, even vocalized the same way by the Masoretes, that have a first, second, third, and fourth meaning. And you got to look at, so it's the amount of time really you invest in each resource, the depth, that I think provides the most complete answer. So anyway, so Shamuel personally requested ongoing intercession. So now, most English Bibles say, so Sam prayed to the Lord.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Pages on Palal.
Yeah, Palal. So I'll share with what I learned, and then you tell me if you learned anything different. So personally requested. Personally, I put in there. And you might say, why do you put in personally? And then it's requested. Ongoing. Now, the ongoing here is based on the imperfect conjugation. Intercession.
Yep.
So, Palal decided of his own initiative that he'd receive a thoughtful response regarding the consequences, and thus individually made a request of, asking for intervention, mediation, and arbitration. And this is from Yahowah. It's the hit pa'el stem, whereby the subject, Shamuel, acts upon his own initiative, and in the process causes the object, who is Yahowah here, to respond and engage. Then it's in the imperfect conjugation, which speaks of that occurring on an ongoing basis. So personally requested, because that's the nature of the stem. Well, personally, requested is Palal's primary meaning means to ask, to request.
Yes.
Its secondary meaning is mediation and intercession.
Well, I got those. I didn't do all the English stuff. I mean, all the grammar stuff.
Yeah, the hit pa'el stem is not used very often, so it's a unique stem, and its attributes are interesting. That it wasn't societal custom, it wasn't a group request. Nobody asked Samuel to do this, but that it was completely individual. You know, he didn't have a group prayer meeting. It was him by himself, on his own initiative, making this request.
Yeah, I did get that the Palal, of course, has a double lamb. So
yes, it does.
Really asking for direction,
right?
Extra emphasis on direction and teaching. You know, help me on this, and
right.
And he's
because the lamed is a shepherd's staff. It means to direct, to lead, and to protect.
So,
but primarily it is to direct and to lead. And then the pay, the first letter in Balal, is a mouth, right?
Right.
So direct me, lead me with words.
Right.
With spoken words.
Communicate with me, yeah.
Right, yeah. Communicate with me the guidance and leadership that I require on this.
Exactly.
Yeah, as I say, you don't have to be literate. You don't have to be literate to understand this language. It's a marvelous thing about it.
Yeah.
Just know what the letters look like.
Yeah.
Decided of his own initiative. As you drill down on Palal, you find out that that he was requesting a thoughtful response.
That's good.
Yeah. And he knew that, he had this horrible perspective. He just thought that them asking for a ruler to decide for us, and to govern us, was a wrong and harmful, disastrous, displeasing, miserable choice.
What are you crazy? That's the most easy thing.
So he was right. So Samuel said, "Okay, you got all the people. They want this one thing. I'm listening to them. I think, are you nuts? That's a terrible idea." And so it does two things. One, it says truth is not popular.
True.
Right? Truth is not popular. So many people say, how in the world can you be right and everybody else be wrong? Well, look at Samuel. He was right. Everybody else was wrong, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
So very, very common. And second, that he said, I'm going to go to the source. This is my perspective on this, everything that I know about Yahowah and the guidance I've read, that this is a horrible idea. But
nobody goes to that either.
I'm going to go privately, personally, to God and ask him to intervene here, because this is beyond me. And it's kind of like, too, that Yahowah was saying, or Samuel was saying, you asked me to do this.
Yeah.
You inspired me to do this. You've guided me. You've been with me every step of the way. And the people want to reject me.
Yeah.
And they want a leader like the Gentile nations to decide and make decisions and to govern them. Is my ego getting in the way here? Did I miss something? What's going on here, God?
Yeah. We know what it is.
So he went to God for answers.
Yeah. Then he tells him, it ain't you, pal, it's me.
Yep. So he wanted it from Yahowah. Then Yahowah said, when you go personally, quietly, privately, of your own initiative to Yahowah, and you genuinely are expecting insights from him, guess what? What's the first thing he's going to do? Did Yahowah say, hey, listen, I'm busy. I got other things to deal with.
No.
Go figure this out for yourself.
No. He's going to help you every step of the way.
Right. Then Yahowah said, answered, Amar, spoke, responded, audibly using words. 2, Shemuel. Did he speak to the people? Nope. Spoke to Shemuel. What? He didn't know the people. They didn't know him. He didn't know them. But he did know Shemuel.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to Shemuel, choose to carefully listen within certain limits to the voice of the people concerning everything what they have to say to you, because they are not against you, rejecting you, but instead they have temporarily rejected me, avoiding and actually despising an association with me as an authority and advisor to ponder, to consider, and to respond to over them.
That's just absolutely sad.
So what Yahowah is saying here is that, Shemuel, I really want you to listen to what they have to say. Not because I want you to agree with them, because I want you to understand what they have to say and what it means.
I think he wanted us to understand it too. So it'd be
exactly. I want you to listen to what they have to say. And it's the idea that I began this program talking about the idiocy of the religion of Christianity. Its base proposition of Shaul v. Yahowah. And the idiocy of it. Well, if you don't listen to what Paul has to say, then there's no way you can expose and condemn the rubbish that has stolen the souls of billions of people.
Yes.
So until you really listen to and understand what it is that the people want in terms of how many, in America, how many people show patriotic tendencies?
Most.
How many are political?
Vast majority.
How many are religious?
Once again, large swaths of the population.
How many support their troops? Honor their troops?
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Absolutely think they're saving us.
Right.
Seen the Navy ad recently?
Oh,
New
God.
Navy ads, we fight them over there so they can't come and get you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They have to get through all of us before they can get to you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just, it is.
I ain't afraid of them.
Absolutely. And so, God wants you to understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't, he didn't say agree with them.
No.
He didn't say I want you to listen to and agree with them. He said I want you to listen to what they have to say so that you understand it. And that way, then you will recognize what it is they're really asking for. And what they're saying is they don't want to have a relationship with me.
Yeah.
They're not rejecting you, per se. They're rejecting me.
Yeah.
Avoiding me. Despising an association with me. And that's when if you're patriotic, if you're political, if you're religious, if you're pro-military, you're doing the same thing today. You're showing your disdain for Yahowah and rejecting an association with him. And so...
Now, you can't do it any other way. That's exactly what it says.
Right. So listen to the voice. Listen to the sound of the people, the nation, the group of followers, the related kin, concerning with regarding to everything, the totality of what they have to say, Amar, or what they propose on an ongoing basis regarding their relationship to you. Because, for indeed, truly, this is key, they are not against you, lo eth ata, rejecting you, ma'ak, avoiding an association with you at this moment, temporarily despising, scorning, and spurning you, being adverse to and loathing you. This was in the call perfect. So it means that this occurred for a finite period of time. Now, a finite period of time could well be from the time of the Exodus all the way up to the point of Yahweh's return. That would still be finite.
Yeah.
It's a long period of finite, but it's still finite. And since the chosen people, Yisrael, eventually form an association with Yahweh, stop despising him, stop rejecting him, this has to be written in the perfect. And so it is. They're actually despising an association with me as an authority and advisor to ponder, to consider, and respond to. Yahweh wants to be the person we look to for guidance,
Leadership.
for decisions, for leadership.
Right.
Now, what follows here, Kirk, is sad. But no, first of all, it's sad that Yahweh is saying that by choosing government, you're rejecting God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a simple statement. By choosing government, you are rejecting God. But it goes on to say, similar to and consistent with all of the deeds, the customs, and the practices that they have engaged in from the day I lifted them up and withdrew them out of the crucibles of Mitzrayim, even to this very day, and also rejecting and abandoning me, and serving gods of others.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're doing so to you. Wow. So what Yah is saying here is that the nature of the nation, the nature of the people, Didn't change.
No.
He found them being dictated to by the government and religious authority, the military and economic prowess of Mitzrayim, Egypt. He found them as slaves in a kingdom where the Pharaoh claimed that he was the son of God.
Mm-hmm. Amen-Ra.
Yeah, and where his military was used to enslave them, and where they were forced to build homes for the Pharaoh and his family, and temples for their wannabe gods.
Yeah.
That's where he found them, in squalor, beaten, mistreated, their sons murdered.
Yeah, you could just arbitrarily say, kill all the sons.
Right.
They did.
And that's where he found them. And he says, consistent with all of the deeds, the customs, and practices that they have engaged in from the very day that I lifted them up and withdrew them from the crucible of Mitzrayim, right to this very day. They have rejected and abandoned me. Wow.
It's like, what do I have to do for you people?
Okay. Not only did I defeat the greatest army the world had known at that time,
yeah,
and not only did I provide safe escape for you and walk with you all along the way and guided you and fed you and clothed you and provided drink for you and shelter for you, keeping your enemy at bay, liberating you, and then inspiring and empowering and enriching you with my Torah guidance, and then giving you the promised land, and ridding that home of the belligerents, the disease. And yet, all along the way, you were grumblers, rejecting me.
Yeah, your deeds, your work.
Yeah, that's right. And it's interesting here. He says that Allah ana'eth him, the day I lifted them up and I withdrew them.
Yes.
You know, the difference was the Egyptian pharaohs, the Egyptian leaders, the Egyptian military, the Egyptian merchants, as slaves they had to bow down to.
Absolutely.
But here's the most powerful, the most, awe-inspiring individual in the universe, and Yahowah says, I lifted you up. Yeah. I got you off your knees. I didn't have you change from bowing down to them to bowing down to me. I lifted you up.
Mm-hmm. That's why you ought to learn how to draw his name.
Yeah.
A reminder every daggum day.
Right. Yeah, it begins with the hand that reaches down and out to lift up the two individuals, mm-hmm. both who are standing and reaching up to him. Mm-hmm. And between those two individuals is the tent peg, which means they were made secure in a home, protected, and empowered and enriched, added to, because it's the wall, increased in every way. So I lifted them up and withdrew them. In association with them, I caused them to rise up, and together with them, I took them away. Hiphil infinitive, expressing action unlimited in time or individual, whereby the subject, in this case Yahowah, causes the object, in this case the children of Israel, to participate in the action just like the subject, God himself. So by using this stem, the Hiphil stem in the infinitive, it means that when he lifted them up, he caused them to be like him. That when he withdrew them from the crucibles of Egypt, from human religious, political, economic, and military oppression, that he caused them to be like him, free, liberated, separated from these things.
Kodesh, yeah.
Well, so it's an interesting spin. So, yeah, he is actually enabling the beneficiaries to be like him. You know, the Pharaoh falsely claimed to be like God, and Yahowah made the children of Israel genuinely like God. That's the whole thing of his adopting us and perfecting us and enriching us and empowering us so that we can stand and be raised. Is withdrawn from human oppression, is that we become more like him.
There's so many positive things to learn.
Yeah.
And they're all associated, doesn't matter what, because I've been with you a long time now. And there's so many verses that all come back to these same marvelous things that he's done and will do in his promises, his word of promise. What's that? Emerald?
Well, so, yeah, Amar means to say and to promise. Yeah. So, and
it's everywhere you turn.
And Imra means a word, which is a promise.
Yeah, right? Same root, yeah.
Right, and he took them away from the crucibles of Egypt, Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is the plural of crucible. So where was the pressure coming from that caused the children of Israel to be enslaved? By the religion, the government, the religion,
political, religious,
economic oppression, right? And all along the way, they azabbed Yahowah.
Yes.
Azab.
Abandoned.
Right. So, Kirk, there were two references here. One, Yahowah was saying that they rejected and abandoned him by choosing that they wanted a government imposed over them. But he also says that their rejection and abandonment of him was a direct result of, and this is a continuation of 1 Samuel 8:8, by serving, by abad, expending considerable energy and intensity to be indentured to, lowering their status by being enslaved, and reduced to servitude by worshiping the gods of others. Now, most people who write this would say different gods or another god or other gods. It's actually, the possessive here is ashar, of others. And Elohim precedes it. So it is really that they rejected and abandoned Yahowah by serving, by worshiping the gods of others. Well, you know, Christianity, Jesus Christ is a God who was modeled after Dionysus. God of others. The Lord was the principal god of Babylon.
Baal. Right?
Yeah, Baal, the god of others. You know, Roman Catholicism created a religion based on blending Greek Gnosticism and the Dionysus cult of the Greek culture with the Roman affinity for Mithra and the unconquerable sun.
Son of the morning sun, yeah.
Right, and so that's how they blended their religion together. It's the god of others. You know, if you look at the Trinity is the god of the Babylonians, of the Assyrians, of the Egyptians, of the Greeks, of the Romans. If you look at Christianity and you're saved by grace, the gratia, the gods of the Romans, who are the charities, the charis of the Greeks. Gods of others.
With anything, can they?
Right. And so they didn't just want a king like the other nations.
They want Satan.
They wanted gods of the other nations.
Now, what prompts that? I mean, really. What?
You have the real McCoy. He has led you. Yeah, he led you out of.
Look at Islam.
Right.
Of Islam, and well, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that because it's worked out so well for Muslims. Yeah. So let's go with that God.
Anywhere, you know, go to any overly overt pagan society that's really run by that society, not a government that's keeping in town, but those type of
right.
and say, wow, that's just such a model for a community. I just can't wait. I mean, where do you get that? Surely they observed that around the world. I mean, around where they were.
So from God's point of view, you azab him, forsake any association with him, neglect him, leave him. When you do one of two things, you choose a human institution to govern you,
right,
or you choose to worship the gods of others. Well, the God who was speaking here, his name is, what was this fellow's name that's been talking to Shamuel?
Oh, Yahweh?
Oh, Yahowah. Yeah, Yahowah. Okay. And so, is there a Yahowah in Christianity?
Not even close.
No. Is there a Yahowah in Islam?
Not at all.
Is there a Yahowah in socialist secular humanism?
No, there's no God at all.
How about Scientology? How about Mormonism?
No.
How about Hinduism? How about Buddhism? How about Confucianism?
Afraid not.
So, mankind, 99.99999%, even in Judaism, is there a Yahowah in Judaism?
No, they're not allowed.
No. So, 99.999% of the world's population is worshiping or considering the gods of others.
Right.
And in so doing, rejecting Yahowah. That's why that first statement, the Yahweh etched in stone, you will not exist with other gods in my presence.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to share.
No,
not going to have false gods in heaven.
I'm zealous, I'm jealous.
Yeah. By the way, how did the old Egyptian gods do in confronting Yahweh's desire to remove his children?
I think they got crushed.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yep.
There were no more. I mean, when you go through history, they left quite a void. I mean, they were attacked by a lot of the Hittites, Arabs. A lot of people came to Egypt to fill the void. So the army must have been destroyed.
Yep.
From a historical standpoint, there's no argument there.
So this is Yahweh's next statement. Oh, by the way, I just think there's one other little tidbit that I should throw in this last one. The gods of others, Asher, who are, Asher means the gods who are strange, who are man-made. Every god but Yahweh is made in man's image, who are additional and different. These Asher, the gods who solicit a following. And by the way, old Asher is derived from Benjamin, in accord with 1 Chronicles 7:12. And who is the Benjamite that this discussion is repudiating?
No.
So,
it was 1 Chronicles what?
1 Chronicles 7:12.
7:12.
It says that it's the gods who are derived from Benjamin.
Gosh. What a tie-in there.
Yeah, and of course the Shaul that this is really about, who is the Paul, who is the author of the Christian New Testament, he was a Benjamite.
Yes.
And it was his God that he elevated because he hated Yahweh.
You know, Asher and then Ashur on the root is to remain behind, being left behind.
Yeah, I know. It is.
I mean,
the gods who are left behind. Yeah, and those are the gods who are left behind by. Yeah, Asher. Yeah, I know. And there's a place where you pursued it, and I didn't write it down, but you were right. It is the root of the word means to leave behind.
How that's the God you want.
Yeah, I should put that in my definition because most of us have left behind a man-made God. I have. I was once, my God was once Jesus Christ.
Yes.
I left behind my man-made God. I took to almost worshipful status the U.S. government, its military, its constitution, and the Republican Party. I've left behind those man-made gods. So they are the gods left behind by all that participate in the covenant. So Asher is an interesting concept in this regard. Who come to an end. And so now then, it is at your discretion. But I'd like for you to listen and to understand. But only because you should testify repeatedly as a witness, admonishing and warning them now and continuously, and approach them and tell them conspicuously in their presence.
Right. So good.
The judgments and the decisions of the ruler who shall reign over them.
And what do they call that? It's mitzvah.
Yeah.
Mishpat.
Mishpat here. Yeah, when the first time I read it, I thought it was mitzvah for some reason, but it's mishpat. So let's deal with the words as the words are. And so it says, and so now then, it's your discretion, but I'd like for you to. Now that's a lot of words that aren't directly from shama, the verb, which means to listen, to understand, to hear. And the reason that I added all those words is because this was written in the call imperative. The imperative is a request presented under the auspices of free will, with volition being given in second person. No, that sounds maybe too much grammar. In Hebrew, there are three basic moods that express volition. And they express volition in the first, second, and third person. In other words, Yahweh can speak to us and say, it is my choice. This is my will. This is what I want. That's first person volition. Yahweh can speak to us and say, you know, I'd like for you to choose, but it's your choice. That's second person volition. And third person volition is that Shamuel could be, or Yahweh could be telling Shamuel, you know, it's their choice. It's their choice. Let them decide. And that would be
Moses who told Aaron to say this.
Right. That's third person volition. So it's interesting that it's a language based upon the concept of free will that expresses free will in first, second, and third person. So it's at your discretion, but I'd like for you to listen and to understand. Listen and understand is the definition of the verb. The other conveys the imperative mood. So
how are you going to get obey out of
that? Yeah, I don't know. But, okay. Now, then he says, there's only one reason that I want you to listen. And this is really important. I don't want you to listen because I want you to agree. I don't want you to listen because I want you to show empathy. I don't want you to listen because, you know, it's polite. I'm only asking you to listen for one reason. And so that you can testify as a witness, admonishing them, warning them. You know, you and I, we're Christians. We know a fair amount about Christianity. The reason that I can speak with some authority in admonishing and warning Christians is that I've listened to the myths of Christianity. I know them.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. And so Yahweh wants an informed spokesperson. You know, Yahweh could have picked anybody to go into Mitzrayim, into the crucible of Egypt, with him to liberate his people. He did not need to pick an 80-year-old shepherd.
But consider who he was.
But that shepherd grew up in the family of Pharaoh. That shepherd knew the culture. He knew what they said. He had witnessed the pain of his people in their enslavement.
Yeah.
That's
why he said.
Right. So, you know, he was aware. And so as being aware, he was naturally predisposed to be an effective spokesperson. Yahweh could teach him what was right, but he already knew it was wrong. And that's the same thing here. I want you to listen and understand. Don't go off and be condemning, for example, Islam until you know it and understand it. Once you do, have at it. And don't read the Quran and Hadith so that you can empathize with them, so that you can support Islam. but so that you can expose it and condemn it knowledgeably.
Right.
So he wants them, Shamuel and us, to listen to patriots and to those who are pro-military and those who are political and pro-governance and who are religious.
Yeah.
He wants us to listen to them for the express purpose of being able to effectively admonish them, to warn them.
You can't be an effective
to serve as a witness.
You have
right.
no knowledge of.
Correct. Because with Yahowah, this all the way through, this has been a choice. It's him or man.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you to present Yahowah's offer, his plan, you have to show how it is different than the failed false hope of man. And so that's why he wants us to listen and to understand. But it's our choice. He says, I'm not going to force you to do it, but I'd like you for you to do it, so long as you choose.
Yeah, he really wants you to.
Yeah, but only because, ki, indeed, albeit by way of contrast, rather. This is ood bahem. What does it mean if you repeat a word in Hebrew? Ood.
Oh, it's double significant. It's multiplied.
Yeah, multiplied.
Really serious. Pay real attention. Like
yeah. So this is ood, means you need now to examine closely every meaning of ood, and because Yahweh's conveying all of them here. So ood means to testify.
Mm-hmm.
It means to be a witness.
Mm-hmm.
It means to do something continuously and repeatedly. It means to admonish and to warn. It means to, and bahem means now and continuously.
Mm-hmm.
So you should correct them at this time and on an ongoing basis and caution them by boldly declaring a vital caveat. Again, in the Hiphil imperfect infinitive. Don't just do it once. Repeatedly serve as a witness. Continuously admonish them. Warn them now and continuously. What'd you get out of ood?
Well, I just got, you shall solemnly bear witness from Yada, testimony. So you can testify. Mm-hmm. And then you shall, later, right following that, you shall warn them or tell them the God. Tell them conspicuously.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep, well, this Nagad HaHim means when you're telling them, when you're warning them, when you're admonishing them, approach them and tell them conspicuously in their presence. You know, when I wrote Prophet of Doom, for example,
mm-hmm.
I wrote it under my own name, published it, put it on the internet, and then declared it on during 3,000 hours of radio interviews.
Yeah, that's continuous.
I don't know how you can be more conspicuous.
No.
I informed them in their midst. I made it known, announcing, expounding, acknowledging as a messenger, and publishing a report in opposition to them. It's Yahweh's way. The same thing is true with questioning Paul.
Well, obviously this was recorded, so it was published as well.
Yep.
So it's there for anyone to look at.
Yeah. So Yahweh didn't say, leave them to their own devices. Whatever they want to do is fine with me. He says, no. Go approach them. Tell them conspicuously in their presence. Inform them in their midst, making it known by announcing, exposing, acknowledging as a messenger, and publishing a report in opposition to them. The decisions and the judgments, the mishpat,
mm-hmm.
the procedures and processes, even the justifications, from shafat, from the means to exercise judgment, to make decisions and to decide disputes, to plead the cause and the case of, and to defend the controversy of the government. Shamuel had been empowered by Yahweh to shafat.
Yes.
To exercise judgment, to make decisions, to decide disputes. To plead the cause and the case of individuals, to defend people when there was controversy. He had been empowered by Yahweh to shafat based upon Yahweh's misfat, procedures and processes,
right?
Decisions and judgment. And so now Yahowah was turning that and saying, they don't want mine, they don't want yours, they want their king. So the king also has their own decisions. They have their own judgments. They have their own procedures and processes. They got their own justifications for sure.
He's going to tell what it is, too, and how they're going to rule him.
Exactly. So these are the decisions and justifications, the procedures and processes, the judgment of the ruler, of the king, of the one in charge of the government, who shall reign, who as a result of this association shall act as an authority to rule and be in charge over them. Mm-hmm. So what do you think God's going to do? Is going to blow sunshine and paint rainbows?
No, he's going to tell the truth. Which is
he going to side with Paul and say that, all governments are established by me and you ought to surrender and submit to them? They're for your own good?
To the contrary.
Yeah, the opposite.
Yeah. He's going to say, okay, this is what you want. Let me tell you what you're going to get.
Yeah, this is what you want. This is the consequence. This is what you want. This is what you are going to get. And so Shamuel, who means listen to God, conveyed, continually actually spoke, communicated, declared, on an ongoing basis, literally, call imperfect. All of the statements, every word, kol davar, the entire message of Yahowah, to a nation, ha'am, to a group of people, followers of related kin, who were asking for, who were inquiring about, Sha'al, who were demanding, Sha'al. Ever heard of a name that sounds close to Sha'al?
I have a note here on this one. It's like the root. It means to question, and then Sha'al, right. Of course, can be defined as a place of questioning. Yep. Sha'al, of course, is Paul, and it's also
right. There you go.
The place of separation.
Sha'al is the verb that serves as the basis of the name Shaul.
To question.
That's why it means we're inquiring about, to question.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite...
Yeah.
Yahowah didn't leave a stone unturned to get his message across. I mean, anyone who would seriously consider, really look at the word, which it took me a long time before I realized that was the key. Until maybe 8 years ago, I started really looking. And you cannot miss it. This is not just they said, or so-and-so said, or, he just doesn't leave anything off the table.
And he leaves these breadcrumbs, if you will, along the trail. That little signs,
like little diamonds.
Diamonds. It's his word that is Zion, which is a signpost along the way. He leaves little signs along the way.
Yes, he does.
And Shaul is one of those signs. So it's to a nation who are asking for a ruler, a king, a leader, to be in charge.
You have to remember, the guy they're going to choose is Shaul.
Yeah, and by the way, who did, Christianity, who claimed to be in charge of the world? Paul. Shaul claimed to be in charge of the world, and it was by acquiescing to him and disagreeing with everyone else that one was part of his club, which is the cult of Christianity. Yeah. Then he said, and this is where it really gets heavy.
Yeah.
Then he said, so, by the way, even if you didn't read this, shouldn't it be enough to know that by being political, by choosing to be governed, by celebrating one's politics, by being patriotic, that you are in opposition to God and are rejecting God? Shouldn't that be enough by itself?
Well, even years ago, many years ago, I used to say, well, what would happen if we did it God's way? Wouldn't he protect us like he did with Israel?
Yeah.
And, of course, he would, but nobody would be brave enough to do it. They don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, it's like writing Prophet of Doom and questioning Paul under my name and not hiding.
Yeah.
I just said, I'm working on behalf of the most powerful, influential individual in the universe. I don't need to hide. Why would I want to hide? What is a good is a gun going to do me when I have him?
You know, I had a conversation with some folks Friday night, and they were talking about this type of thing. About it, conversation kept going towards. I thought a little more fearful. Not that these people, they're family, so they're not fearful. But I interjected a thing just to remind everybody, as much as myself, who are these people versus Yahowah?
Right.
You know, he promised to take care of us. I'm not concerned. Just I can't save up enough water. I can't get enough ammunition. You know, I can't get enough food storage for events that are going to take place.
Right. You get place. Exactly. Why stress over it?
Yahowah can't help these folks or take care of me. It's a little somebody's chilling.
Yeah, and by the way, then God says, and this ought to be enough too, that by choosing the gods of others, that they have rejected him. Yeah. And I would ask you, Kirk, who came up with the name Jesus Christ? Can you find Jesus Christ anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms?
No, you can't find it. You can find Christos early, but Jesus doesn't show up to about the 17th century. That alone should blow your mind if you're...
Yeah, exactly.
You got a brain.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a name and a God created in the image of man. But God is going to tell us. He is going to tell us precisely what they're going to get. And even if he said nothing, though, just knowing these two things ought to be sufficient.
Yeah, he should say, no, thank you.
No, thank you. No, but not even no, thank you. Just hell no.
No. Now get away from me.
Yeah.
You fools.
Yeah. Then he said, this specifically will continuously exist as the decisions and judgments, the procedures and processes, the measures and justifications of the ruler who will reign over you. And since we're at the end of our third half-an-hour segment, Kirk, and we've got Scott here, this is really a good place to stop.
Okay.
And, because what he has to say next is, it begins where America is today, fixated on war, fixated on the military, fixated on celebrating everything associated with war and military. And that's where the king begins. That's where Yahowah says he will first act. He will establish for himself a military, and he will take your sons.
Yeah, and it's verbatim for our life, to our society.
It is.
I mean,
it is.
It's so on the money that you just, God, you ought to read this. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, he's going to take your sons for himself, and he's going to appoint for himself vehicles to be used as his weapons of war.
And drain your pocketbook to do it.
And drain your pocketbook to do it. And by the way, when he gets to your daughters, he is going to have them work making drugs.
Yeah.
Because he wants them to drug you, to seduce you, so you're easier to slaughter. Wow. Yeah, where we're going here, folks, isn't pretty. It's extraordinarily eye-opening. But with that, I'd like to bring our program to a close. And Scott, thank you for being here to record us, and Kirk, thank you for participating. We'll be back with you with another episode of Observations this time next week. May God bless.